Hello everyone. We are live again here from Toronto, and it's a beautiful evening out here. We are into our seventh episode of Market Your Journey, and we have our special guest with us, Pierre. He's currently, the digital strategy director at Reprise Digital. He has more than you can say 10 to 12 years of experience working across agencies like Mindshare, uh, Peach Marketing Agency, and working all through. I'd like to show my gratitude and welcome you, Pierre, here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Without any wasting any time, let us jump into our first question. And I'm really excited to know about the journey of Pierre here. Pierre, why did you choose marketing and advertising as your career to go on, first of all? And how crucial role, since you've worked mostly in the strategic department, so how crucial role does strategic planning play for you in that particular ecosystem?
Yeah, great. Yeah, I mean, my background's a bit diverse, I guess. Marketing wasn't really by choice, so maybe I'll just go back a bit with some of the background. But I actually started in international development, international management. So I spent some time in working in Boston. I spent some time in France and Mexico. And coming out of my bachelor's, that was really what I wanted to do. So I went to Laval University for my MBA. I actually went for international development and humanitarian action. So I really wanted to work in that angle. And after about a semester, I realized that the program wasn't really teaching me much. It was really driven for people who didn't study business and wanted to do a master's that had that touch of business. So after a semester, honestly, marketing ended up being the one that would have been the easiest and fastest to graduate in. So that's how I ended up studying in marketing, to be quite honest. And yeah, I mean, while I was there, I joined this great program. It was called Mission Commerciale de l'Université Laval. And I got the chance to work in India for a few weeks and in South Africa, then in 2013, the following year. And that was really why I stayed at Laval. It wasn't really for the studies, it was more for the experience. And then coming out of that, I was planning on staying in Montreal in Quebec. And I got a job offer to go back home. So I'm from the East Coast in Moncton, New Brunswick. And I actually worked in the forestry industry for 2 years. So that was interesting. And that overlapped as I started a publication business. So just getting exposure to running a business and a startup. And between all of this, I kind of fell into some marketing, specifically digital, because that was what was lacking, especially for that forestry industry in the role I was in. So throughout my years at university, I never really, well, I didn't learn anything for digital marketing. They weren't covering it yet. So it was kind of, winging it, just being very curious and doing a lot of research and Googling a lot of how do you do this, how do you do that? And I kind of figured it out. And with the startup, it gave me another canvas to paint on and try to figure it out. And then throughout that, I was actually lucky enough in 2012, coming back from India, I did a summer internship at a COA, which is Atlantic. It has to do with Atlantic business promotion across the world. And I did an internship there with Janice Gauguin, and she a few years later in 2015, while I was finishing up my contract at FP Innovation in Forestry, she asked me to do a contract, still international trade, with New Focus, who does strategic planning. And I promise you, this is all going to tie back together. I'm just giving you the long story here.
No problem.
So I started working at New Focus, that does strategic planning. So a lot of great minds doing very specific work for what their expertise was. So we had someone as expert in HR, in finance, in operations, in marketing, and they needed some support back then for international trade to do some events. So I worked there, and quickly they found that I had a niche in digital marketing that they didn't have a full control on. So they invited me on. I did some work with them. And while all of this was going on, back in 2013, when I graduated university from my MBA, I actually started Peach Marketing. So I started doing some freelancing that grew. So while I was doing everything else, I was slowly building that business. And then in 2015 through to 2017, I kind of did both strategic planning and marketing, just kind of seeing how that worked together. And then finally, in 2018, I sold my shares to Peach Marketing to a partner who had come on a couple of years earlier, and that's where I kind of came to Toronto in search of bigger and better challenges, and that's where I ended up at Mindshare and now at Reprise.
You know,
That's quite inspiring, and that's a lot of points to be connected, and
Yeah.
how you got yourself to what you are today. It's quite inspiring. So let me put this question in a way it would be easier for the viewers to also understand. What do you think? So you had you had connected so many dots together. What do you think were the best resources that helped you on the way and helped you where you are today?
Yeah, I mean, the first one definitely would have been, I don't know if it's a resource, but it drove me to resources. It's just pure curiosity. I mean, obviously through that, it was a lot of blogs, following a lot of experts on social media or just on their platforms, whether it's podcasts or anything else. But honestly, I mean, I still feel like I learn something every day. Obviously, digital changes so quickly. I'm blessed where I am right now at Reprise to have amazing resources where we have, our global team driving, POVs on any changes. We have our vendors, our partners sharing information as it happens. But I'd say back then, just curiosity and the thirst of knowing really helped a lot. And the other one would be just the people I surrounded myself with. And this goes as far back as when I was 15 for my first real job. I still remember my managers and my full-time supervisor when I was working at Sport Check and just, teaching me how to sell. And, years later, I kind of thought back to that moment where it was, just, how to show confidence, how to own a room. And it came from, working as a 15-year-old, just being lucky enough to have great managers there. But from there, even, at New Focus, I mentioned it, just a lot of very skilled people that were very patient and very understanding. That you have to understand in that environment, it was a lot of people that were either in the middle or in the tail end of their careers where they had a specific expertise and a craft that they worked on for 20 years, 30 years. And I was coming in there with, maybe 5 years under my belt. So for them to take the time to really work with me, to help me understand better, it really helped. And Shreya, to go back to your question, because I know I kind of skipped over it, but the importance of, that strategic planning or that strategic mindset really came from that. Because for those who don't really know about strategic planning, it's a lot of work to ask the right questions, and it really is just understanding a business better and better, and it's really coming from the client. So you're not going in, you have an expertise, but you don't have the answers. You're really just guiding the client to help you uncover that answer. So if you're looking at, great marketers out there, they might be able to do great copy, a great ad, great visuals. But when you think about kind of a strategic marketer that has that mindset of, curiosity and strategic mindset, it's not even about asking more questions, but it's answering more than the brief and digging deeper. So it's about asking the right questions and understanding how this fits in the broader spectrum, in the broader picture.
I kind of like.
I think that really. Sorry, you cut off there. Go ahead.
No, sorry. I kind of like when you said ask the right questions. That's more important than anything else, to be very honest.
Yeah, and I mean, I work with my team on a weekly basis. We have meetings, and again, I think it comes a lot through curiosity. Like you need to want to know more and understand it better for you to come up with the right questions to ask. So again, it's just it comes back to, I think, one of the most overused buzzword in Toronto in anything related to marketing is insights, right? Everybody wants insights. You're having weekly meetings and they want the insights. An insight, first of all, if you're finding insights every week, you probably should be a millionaire, because that's impossible.
Right.
you can make observations or recommendations, but you can't find true insights on a weekly basis. But there's an art to it. Like you need to be able to look at data and look at observations and understand where to push deeper and dig deeper to pull something that's actionable. And again, the whole being a strategic marketer versus a good marketer, I think we see that. I've read a few articles lately on Inc. and I don't know what other publication, but they were talking about how CMO, the chief marketing officer, often is kind of the black sheep. They're kind of the C-suite person who doesn't always get invited to meetings, and they're kind of on the outside. And it's also the C-suite position with the shorter lifespan. So usually it's a very high turnover ratio. And I think that has a lot to do with a lot of these people have had, and nothing against them, I don't know their background, I'm assuming here, before I get a bunch of angry emails. But I feel like a lot of them might have a background where they executed amazing marketing campaigns, or maybe have a really great creative mind, but they don't truly understand how marketing fits into the rest of the business, or they don't understand how the rest of the business works. So they're very marketing focused, where again, when you look at strategic planning, it's how does everything work together and how do we get everything to work together towards one goal. And I think maybe that's something where there's a disconnect often with the marketing side is, you know, you can think of great ads and put on great campaigns, but does it really fit with what everything else is doing? You know, is finance yelling at you because you went over your production budget? Is sales mad at you because you didn't really show the key features? So there's so much more at stake here. So I think that's a big one for sure.
You know, you explained it quite beautifully that doing marketing, doing those ads, you need to answer that why, you know, you need to have that knowledge of why. And the second point that you mentioned, you know, the buzzword about insights. So I just wanted to quickly tell you about one incident. When I used to work back in agency, in Denshu Agents Network, we used to have a scrum where our target was to every client, we need to give 6 notes and insight depending upon the size of the client. But that note and insight should be having the recommendation. So that second point of yours about recommendation was just like right on the target. I really liked about that particular thing.
Yeah.
And it's exactly, you should be doing the recommendation. Of course, the notes and insights could be anything about the account, but it's all about the recommendation that you're suggesting to the client.
And I mean, at the end of the day, if you think of an insight, it's almost something that would change. It could change dramatically what you're doing. Like, it's a very key piece of information. And again, to have that on a weekly basis, you'd just be running after your tail because you'd never be able to actually action something and see it through. So I think it's also just confusion in the marketplace of what's the insight? Are you looking for an insight or a recommendation? Because I think you're looking for a recommendation on how we should change our bid strategy because we saw this last week. I don't think we want to completely change our entire marketing strategy based on one week where something happened and we saw a shift in the market. That might be a small one. So that's definitely something that we've seen some movement on.
Moving on towards your strategy part, from strategy part to something that we would be excited to know, and of course the audience would also be excited to know, is that what's that one thing that you wish that you would have known before you began your career?
I think the biggest one really is importance of networking, and that kind of ties into building that strong personal brand. I remember when I came back from my MBA and I moved back to Moncton, I started blogging and I kicked myself because I stopped blogging and I lost all the articles. But the only one that really gained traction was why networking is king, and I kind of dug into that, where I had just had, you know, the great experience of doing that internship, and then it brought me to strategic planning. Like, everything was coming full circle and opening these doors, and it really opened my eyes of the importance of meeting new people. You have your high school friends, and if you're staying at home, it's easy just to stay with them, but you're not all in marketing, you're not all in business. So there needs to be that conscious effort, that proactive effort to go out and meet people and it's not to use them to get ahead, but it's beneficial relationships. It's to know people, it's to develop those relationships. At the end of the day, especially on the out east in New Brunswick, everybody's really nice. So if we can help you, we'll help you. I think Canada in general, we're like that too. But it's just, pay it forward, introducing people. very important, and it comes back to also having strong role models or mentors, right? So it kind of works in the same sense. But I think that's just so important, and it's really disappointing how a lot of universities or colleges don't really work on that. I was lecturer for 3 years at University of Moncton, and a few of the years when I could, I tried to integrate business people from the region to come in and talk and meet the students, so students could try to start to get that one-on-one relationship. I used to do the Chamber of Commerce events, but there's so much more that needs to be done, and I think that's a huge miss for a lot of these organizations. And going back to the Mission Commerciale, where I worked in India and South Africa, those were full-year programs, and part of it was I would myself sit in a room and cold call businesses and sell the services that we were doing. So we were opening up markets in India and South Africa. We were doing Chile, Brazil, China. We had more than one delegation. And we would go out and meet with these business people, right? So I'd meet the business owner or the director of operations, whatever it may be. And again, without putting one and one together back then, but that was a massive network. When I came back, I had met over 100 business owners in the Montreal, Quebec area. So it's how do you do that? How do you allow students to do that, right? Like, how do you give them the tools to be able to have those interactions? And I think that's priceless to have, but it's an opportunity that's lacking, especially right now with no events going on and nobody wants to do 30 people Zoom to have a chit chat. So
yeah, completely agree.
So my next question to you would be, how do you see marketing and advertising coping up with this pandemic which has hit the world? And do you see any changes that are going to happen? And how is the industry basically coping up with this?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. A lot of people assume that, you know, everything's negative, but I think first of all, there's two sides of the stories. Obviously, there's some industries that have been striving during the pandemic, right? If we think of food delivery with Uber Eats, obviously they lost a lot of business with Uber, but their food delivery really took off. If you look at online retail, I read a headline of an article today shared by David on my LinkedIn. I think it said Walmart e-com was up 97% during the pandemic. So I mean, obviously there's some positives. I think the challenge there for those businesses that are actually striving is, how do you take, you know, without taking the word too directly, but how do you take advantage without taking advantage, right? You don't want to be tone deaf. You don't want to be taking advantage of the situation to make money, but at the same time, you have a service or a product that's helping people. So how do you market it in a way that's very relevant or just authentic to just what my service is, and not I'm trying to make money during this terrible time? I think that's a small portion of the market. I think the bigger portion is, you know, this hurts, and how do we get out of it? It's, you know, whether it's tourism or retail. I think it's interesting.
Let him come back.
He's back. There we go.
Yeah. No problem.
So you might have lost a bit of that answer, but you can watch it on replay later. So.
Not a problem.
But yeah, just to finish up, I think a lot of it, I mean, on the marketing buy side, obviously it's difficult, right? Because if you're not selling, it's hard to invest. But I think from a creative standpoint, businesses have embraced it. Like, you need to adapt. And again, you see a lot of the car commercials advertising, you know, world's coming back to normal. We're here when you're ready. So it's really interesting how 6 months ago we were talking a lot in our offices and in presentations about how to be culturally relevant. I think this just really shocked the system and forced all the brands to become culturally relevant overnight. I mean, you think of how quickly this came in. So it'll be interesting to see. But I think right now we'll get out of it, and for the best. I think it just forced people to, again, to be more culturally relevant, which is great for advertisers because you're going to drive more relevant discussions, you're going to drive more engagement, and I think it's also forcing people to look at where they're spending their money and just being more efficient and making sure that every dollar has, you know, an ROI attached to it, and working.
In terms of the revenue. So, of course, it has boosted retail industry for sure. There are some other industries that you might have more of a knowledge considering the clients that you're working on, but the trends have been quite interesting.
And I think unfortunately the bigger players are obviously making out better. If you think of, first of all, just they have obviously cash reserves and access to funds. I think the big struggle here, and obviously in the mindset of day-to-day working with larger brands, but if you just look at your mom and pop shop or your small business, or small and medium business can be up to 10 million, right? Like, it doesn't need to be a mom and pop pizza shop at the corner. I think that's where it's really going to be tough because they don't have that deep pocket of unlimited cash reserves to say we're gonna rebuild. It's really struggling. So I would take this moment to say, evaluate where you're buying your products from and see what you can do to help those local shops next door, for sure.
Sure. You know, so I just have that last question before you go for your dinner. I'd say, or tea, whatever you like. So for all the marketeers out there, like even considering the young, and for sure, and for people who are still in the graduation, what would be your takes and what would be your suggestions during these unprecedented times for them?
Yeah, I think what worked for me, and I've been recommending it for years, but it might be out of touch now, but I'll share it anyways, and then I'll give you my current answer. But in the past, I would always say, do whatever you can or you need to do to get that experience, get that exposure. So I know I started working for very small businesses. My uncle owned a small business and I wasn't charging. And again, you have to figure it out, prove your worth. I rolled up my sleeves and I got in there and I just, did the work and I paid my dues. I think right now, first of all, marketing specific in Toronto, a lot of businesses are hiring. So I think it's a good place to be if you're in Toronto. I don't know about other markets, but I know on LinkedIn, there's job postings every day for marketing. So that's obviously good. But if you're not looking to work in a big agency or you're not having any luck, I would say just go out there, find a business again. So, help out the small businesses. I've been doing it since COVID started, where I've offered, free consults to smaller businesses. I've offered to review how their campaigns are built, give some pointers on how they could do things better. So, help out others and karma will come back. So if it is to go out and offer some services and maybe you're underpaid or not paid, listen, I did it when I was 22. I'm still doing it now, and I won't tell you my age, but I'm still doing it now. And, obviously I don't need to, but it's the right thing to do considering the circumstances. And for younger people, it might just be, that's what you need to do, right? And then the person you're helping, when their buddy says, hey, I saw these on social media, where'd you get that? Oh, it's this great person, and that's how it started for me for Peach Marketing, and we ended up building a decent boutique. So that, and just curiosity. You just have to keep wanting to know more and learn more. There's so much. I learned something today. I really did. I learned about new services that we can do on Twitter for campaign. Like, there's just so much out there. So just be hungry, be bold, and keep learning.
You have imparted so much knowledge that, of course, the young marketeers out there, and we would take a leaf out of your book for sure. And we would like to, thank you for sure for accepting our invitation and featuring on one of our episodes. And it has been a pleasure to have you, Pierre.
Thank you very much, and thanks for being persistent, because I know you've been trying to get a date for me for a few weeks now. So appreciate the work around here.
That's not a problem. I completely understand that the kind of workloads that people are going through because of these times,
Yeah.
and considering that the higher the position, the higher the work is. People think about it in a vice versa kind of a thing. The higher the position, the lower the work is, but it doesn't go that way.
I can't wait to reach that height of position where workload goes down. I haven't seen it yet, but I hope I reach that level one day. I really hope
so. You are in.
Oh, we lost one.
That's okay. I think we are at the last leg of the interview, and thank God.
That was a great Irish goodbye for people who know what that is, where you just kind of disappear on a night out with your friends. That was a great exit.
I think he clicked twice on his headphones, so he went off.
Not a problem. So I know that this airports just go on, and it's a troubling thing for me also sometimes, for sure. I used to actually bully Kabir for that, but now it's like you said about the karma kind of a thing.
There we go. It goes both ways, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for the invite, for having you here at Market Your Journey. It was a pleasure talking to you.
All right, thanks guys.
Thank you so much, Pierre. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Bye.